We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi. Part 2 of this is what if Naruto didn't become the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto was born 5 years before the Kyuubi attack and the fox was sealed into his younger sister. His parent don't have the time to teach him, so he looks to others to help him become a great shinobi. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 6. Team 13 formed. So I would like everyone to say congratulations to your classmates Itachi Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and Enko Mitsurashi for passing the academy in just 1 year. Wish them all the best as they take their first major step as shinobi of the leaf. Naruto, Itachi and Enko stood at the front of their class with smiles on their face as their fellow students called and told them well done. After a year at the academy, the teachers there along with the council knew that despite only being 9, that the 3 were more than ready to become genin. All 3 easily outclassed the others in the class and that keeping them in the academy would be a waste of their talents. Hyuga, Hayate and Hana clapped the loudest to their friends and had sworn that they would do their best to catch up with the trio by next year. Now the real path of being a shinobi begins, Naruto said as Itachi nodded like he normally did while Enko grinned a big smile. It's about time too. I was beginning to get so bored here that I thought my head was going to roll off my shoulders from the boredom. I am honored to have the 3 of you in my class for the little time that you were here. Good luck in your shinobi careers. I know that all 3 of you are going to go far, their sensei said as he bowed back. Thank you sensei, they said at the same time. Your new Jonin sensei has told me that you will meet them on the roof and that they will be there in 10 minutes time. The 3 nodded, gave a wave to their 3 friends who did the same before they exited the classroom. As they got out of the room they nodded to each other before maying the ram seal with their hand and shunshined to the roof. They had learnt that move from Hiruzen after Naruto had asked him to teach him a jutsu during one of their breaks from Fuinjutsu. He had thought about it for a few minutes before settling that Naruto was ready to learn the body flicker technique. Once he taught it to Naruto, the blonde boy then taught it to the others. Hana, Hayate and Hyuga struggled with it and was still trying to learn it while Itachi and Enko had it down within a few days. Arriving on the roof the 3 sat together on the floor. Naruto read a book on Fuinjutsu. Itachi stared at the clouds while Enko twirled a kunai around her index finger. So any idea who we have as our sensei? Enko asked the 2 boys. Both shook their heads. No idea, but I hope they are strong whoever they are. I can't wait to get some more training done, Naruto said, showing just how much of a training nut he was. Thankfully it was not on the level of a certain spandex-wearing jonin. Whoever they are, I am sure they are capable. Hokage-sama would not have put us with someone who could not handle the task. As they nodded, Naruto gripped his hand a little tightly on the sword that he was carrying in his right hand before he placed it in his lap. After 2 months of the order going out from Torino at the shinobi store, the katana that he was waiting for finally arrived. And when he first saw it, he could not help but admire how beautiful and different it was. Torino even said it must have been one of Masamune's finest work. The blade was 27 inches long and the metal was much to his surprise black with a distinct red edge and its handguard had flower-like edges. The handle was a dark purple color while the sheath was plain black but had 2 Uzumaki spirals in red going up the side. One of the first things Naruto noticed was that it was a little bit heavier than other swords, but he was told that was due to the metal of the blade being harder and denser than other blades, which would give it more physical strength. He knew it would take a bit of time to get used to it, but since his weight seal were now up to 30 pounds on each limb, he knew the weight of the blade would not be a problem. When he had received it, he, Hiruzen, Shizen and Tsunade had marveled at how elegant yet powerful the blade looked, with all 3 claiming they had never seen a blade quite like it. After receiving it he had given it a name that he knew would one day make this blade famous. The Shusui. Everyone else agreed that the name just fit the blade. He made a storage seal on his wrist similar to his where his mother kept hers, since he wanted to keep the Shusui on him at all times. He tried to show Kushina the blade, but she only looked at it while it was in its sheath, much to his annoyance. He debated in his head whether to ask her to teach him kenjutsu, but due to past experiences of wanting to ask either Kushina and Minato to train him, he decided against it and figured he would eventually come across a style that worked for him. Until then he could practice with it nonetheless. When it was not sealed up, it was strung to his side. He didn't want to strap it since it just felt right staying in his hands. If I ever meet Muramasa, then I must give him my eternal thanks for this, he thought. As he thought about his sword, an energy signature he recognized appeared to be heading towards them at a great speed. Itachi and Enko saw him tense up a little and were now on alert since they recognized when Naruto could sense someone. While they readied to defend themselves, they saw Naruto quickly relax, indicating whoever it was they were not hostile towards them. Just as they three settled, a swirl of leaves appeared in front of them. When the leaves all disappeared, they all looked in surprise, especially Itachi when the person standing in front of them was none other than a Jonin uniform-clad Mikoto holding little Ria in her arms, who was giggling madly. "Mikoto Obasan, Ka-san? What are you doing here?" Itachi asked since he was surprised to see his mother wearing her Jonin uniform. He could not remember the last time had seen her in her old shinobi uniform, which looked like most of the other uniforms except she had only one sleeve, leaving the other arm bare, and wrapped around her left thigh was a gray sash with the kanji for fire on it, while on her back was a strapped tanto. "Well, is that not obvious, Itachi-kun? You are waiting for your Jonin sensei and here I am," she said, getting 3 gobsmacked looks before Naruto fist pumped the air. "Awesome! Mikoto Obasan is our sensei," he cheered as little Ria looked a little confused but cheered as well. Enko looked happy since she knew that Mikoto Uchiha aka Konoha no Hai Misadorisu, Fire Mistress of Konoha, was one of the best kunoichis in the village. She was up there with Tsunade and Kushina. "Are you sure, Ka-san? But what about Sasuke and Ria? And does Tusan know about this?" "Do not worry, Itachi-kun. Sasuke will stay with one of our sitters while Ria will be with me during our D-rank missions. Then when we eventually get to higher missions, I will arrange for some of the other clan members to watch over them while I am with you all. And do not worry about your father. Even if he does not like it, I am a shinobi of this village and I felt it was time to get back into this life. Plus I have always wanted to take a genin team, and who better than the team my son is in," she said, kissing his forehead, making him blush a little while Ria sat in her big brother's lap. "Well, now that I am here we can introduce ourselves to one another since it is a must-do for a new team," she said as she sat in front of her new team. "Say your name, your likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams for the future." "I will start. My name is Mikoto Uchiha. I like my family, fire jutsus, my friends, and the village. My dislikes are traitors, rapists, those who hurt children and those that dare to hurt my family. My hobbies are learning something new every day and cooking. My dreams for the future has already come true," she said as she looked at her oldest and youngest and smiled. "Enko, why don't you start?" "My name is Enko Mitsurashi. I like my few friends, dango, fighting and blood," she said, making them sweat drop a little at the last part. "My dislikes are perverts, men who think women can't be as strong as them, arrogance and more. My hobbies are making people who I don't like miserable. My dreams for the future, to kill a certain white snake," she said as she got serious at the last part. Her 2 teammates looked at her curiosity since she had never mentioned that last part before, whilst Mikoto narrowed her eyes. She, like the other higher-ups in the village, were aware of Enko's past and understood why she wanted that as her dream. Itachi was up next. "My name is Itachi Uchiha. My likes are my friends, family, ninjutsu and genjutsu and visiting cafes. My dislikes are those who try to hurt my precious people, steak, and those who think they are better than everyone else and who only crave power for selfish reasons. My hobbies are meditating and training to be a great shinobi. My dream is to protect my home and surpass the Uchihas of old. And now our last member," she said, nodding to Naruto, who nodded. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. My likes are my precious people, ramen, fuinjutsu and kenjutsu. My dislikes are people who try to hurt my precious people, rapists, perverts, and those that gain power for selfish reasons. My hobbies are training, spending time with my Gigi and my friends. And my dream for the future is to surpass my parents and to become a great protector of the village." "That is a wonderful dream, Naruto. It sounds like you want to be Hokage one day." Naruto shrugged. "If my path as a shinobi leads me there, then I guess so." Me, Ria said as she put her hand up, wanting to have a go, making the others laugh at the cute little girl. "Another time, Ria-chan," Mikoto said, taking her daughter from her eldest and making the girl pout a little. "So what do we do now?" Naruto asked. "Well, now we will break up for the rest of the day. We don't need to get familiar with one another since we all know each other. Tomorrow I want all of you to go to Training Ground 13 since I want to test how strong the 3 of you are. I have an idea on Itachi and a little on Naruto, but none on you, Enko. I want you all there at 9 a.m. Understood. Hi sensei, the three spoke making Mikoto smile. This is going to be an interesting experience. I can't wait to rub in Kushina's face, she thought, chuckling evilly in her mind. Since you are the only team who have currently graduated from the academy, the three of you are automatically made genin. I hereby announce us as Team 13, she declared, getting big smiles from Naruto and Enko and a small smile from Itachi. Nodding and smiling at them and saying goodbye, Mikoto shined away with Ria in her arms, leaving the new genin team alone. In Hokage office. Minato sat behind his desk, putting a hand through his hair as he sat across from one of the few men in the elemental nations that could fight him one-on-one. On his right was Kakashi and on his left was Jiraiya, whilst Kushina was sat next to him. Over on one of the sofas was Sarutobi with his pipe in his mouth, as remained passive but on alert with their guests. The man in front of them was the fourth Raikage of Kyuubi, and the man who Minato had many battle with in the past. Was a big man with dark skin and whitish blonde hair that was slicked back with a goatee on his chin. He wore his Raikage cloak and hat, whilst around his wrists were golden weights and around his waist was a large gold belt. Beside there were two men. One had white spiky hair that covered part of his left eye and also wore a standard white Kyuubi flak jacket. On his back was a cleaver-like sword and on his right arm was the symbol for black lightning. To his right was a Caucasian man wearing the standard Kyuubi shinobi uniform but had bandages wrapped around the top of his head and his forehead protector covered his right eye. Welcome to the Leaf Village, Raikage-sama. I am happy that you made it here safe and sound. Minato spoke as snorted a little but thanked him nonetheless. Yes, well, since we are here, we may as well get right down to it. No sense at postponing this, he said as Minato nodded while Kushina kept her guard up. Since the attempted kidnap on her life by Kyuubi shinobis when she was younger, she had always been very weary around Kyuubi shinobi. To be frank, she did not trust them one little bit. I agree. I see no reason why our two villages should have to be at each other's throats nay more, and I am more than willing to put the past behind us if it mean the Leaf and the Cloud can finally see each other as allies other than enemies. I agree as well. As Raikage, the safety of my village is my top priority and it will always come first. If it means keeping any ridiculous wars from breaking out again, then I will do it. Minato nodded to that as well. Though he and never exactly saw eye to eye, he was glad that as the Kage of his village he understood that alliances would truly benefit one another. Kyuubi had always been more militarized than Konoha, but then again Kyuubi had always been a very tightly knit and army-like village, whereas Konoha was a bit more relaxed in that sense but always kept their guard up. I am surprised that your brother B is not here. Normally the two of you are inseparable, Minato asked as he narrowed his eyes a little at the comment. B is a Jinchuriki, therefore he knows that his place is to stay at the village and be a protector Kyuubi. As a Jinchuriki he is a tool to be used to keep Kyuubi safe. The Leaf Ninja frowned at that but knew that was mostly how other Jinchuriki were treated like. You know, I have always been curious to who the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi was. Since you know who Kyuubi's Jinchurikis are, do you not think we should know who yours is? That made everyone tense while Kushina and Minato looked at the man dangerously. Something that made the white-haired man tense and prepare himself. Kakashi did the same. That information is classified, Raikage-sama, Minato spoke in a calm and even tone. Oh, so do you believe that my village does not deserve to know of your weapon while you know ours? Said with his voice getting a little louder. Kushina slammed her fist on the table. Jinchurikis are not tools that you can control simply because of what they contain. They are human beings who carry a great burden on their shoulders. Didn't look affected by the comment but instead just raised an eyebrow at her outburst while Minato smoothed her by rubbing small circles on her hand. You are oddly protective towards them, which leads me to guess that your Jinchuriki is someone close to you. All the Leaf Shinobi tensed again and were mentally preparing themselves for some kind of confrontation since Kushina's face contorted to a look that showed she was ready to kill. Well, if you won't tell us, then perhaps it was a mistake coming here, since you cannot be honest with us when we are being honest with you. Honest, Kushina said, snorting. Like how you tried to kidnap me when I was a girl and yet tried to deny it. Yes, very honest. What my father did when he was Raikage does not fall to me. To be honest, I never really understood the big fuss about you Uzumaki. All you were ever good at was Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. The rest you were just mediocre at. Kushina looked like she was about to bow up at the comment A was making at her while the white-haired man just shook his head and face-palmed. Minato did the same thing, knowing this meeting was not going well at all. A and Kushina had never liked each other and he knew it was a mistake bringing her to this meeting. Perhaps coming here was a mistake, A said, standing up from his chair, making everyone else stand up as well. Perhaps we can speak more of this tomorrow. Let's keep a cool head, think on it tonight and then resume tomorrow the details of the alliance, Minato offered since he really wanted some kind of treaty to be formed between their two villages which could stop any confrontations from happening in the future. Minato did not wish for another war to break out. He wanted to keep the children of the village to have to succumb to that path. A scoffed but nodded nonetheless. Tomorrow we will continue this. Until then we shall take up residence in the Golden Leaf Hotel, he said as Minato nodded. A then jumped through the window, making his departure from the meeting. The white-haired man sighed before giving Minato a small smile. Sorry about the window. It's okay. We know of a few people who tend to not use doors, Minato said motioning to Jiraiya who scratched the back of his. The white-haired man nodded and walked out through the door with the other man following behind him. When the door closes everyone breathed easily despite how badly the meeting went. Well, that could have gone better, Kushina said as she checked her nails as everyone playfully glared at her while she whistled innocently. With Team 13. Night began to fall as Naruto, Anko and Itachi sat at Ichiraku's ramen while Shizen sat to the side of them with Mito and Eiji by her side. She was looking after the children since after the meeting with the Raikage, many of the clan heads were having a get-together. Mito and Eiji sat on their seats playfully swinging their legs with noodle hanging from their lips while Naruto had little Mina seated on his lap who was now almost a year old and was clapping her hands as Naruto fed her a little bit of ramen. Those of Uzumaki blood just naturally like ramen, no matter how young, Shizen commented as Itachi and Enko nodded in agreement. You love ramen don't you Mina-chan, Naruto said to his baby sister who just nodded her head and gave him a smile showing the few teeth she had. Aw, she is so sweet aren't you Munchkin, Enko said. Despite being a very tough and tomboyish girl, even she had to admit that little Mina was adorable. Naruto smiled at the interaction between Mina and Enko while Itachi smiled at the scene. Naruto then felt a pull on his sleeve only to see Mito and Eiji looking at him with big eyes and holding their arms out. Naruto had a strange look on his face as he stared down at his two siblings. Despite loving them both, the whole thing with his parents and their attention was due to the twins and in all honesty he had been a little distant from Mito and Eiji, especially Mito since she was very clingy towards him and just wanted to follow him everywhere. Mina despite nearly being one was showing the same signs. The two little girls just loved being with their big brother. Eiji was the same but not as clingy. Shizen saw his slight dilemma and picked up the two twins. No, I want Naru, Mito complained as Eiji nodded in agreement but Shizen gave them a warm smile. No sweeties, it's time to go home. You both need your baths, she said getting a disagreeable look on the twins' faces. Mito-chan, Eiji-chan, Naruto said getting the twin attention. When I come home, I will try to read you a bedtime story, okay? He said getting smiles from the two making a small smile appear on Naruto's face in return. Shizen then put the two down and placed Mina into the stroller who began to cry a little, not wanting to be out of her big brother's warm embrace. Naruto, are you coming? Shizen asked. Not just yet, Nei-chan. I going to have one more bowl. Alright, but be home soon that you might be a shinobi now but you're still 9 and you need your sleep, she said. That goes for all of you too. Anko and Itachi nodded as well and then watched as Shizen gave Naruto a kiss on the forehead before leaving with Mito, Eiji and Mina back to their home. As they left, Naruto sensed the umbus that were watching over them move to follow Shizen and his three siblings. They watched them go before Itachi turned to Naruto. Still trying to put space between them aren't you? He asked as Naruto sighed a little and nodded. Anko looked at him weirdly. Why are you trying to put space between them? They are adorable, I just want to eat them up, she said while Naruto just didn't say anything. It's just some personal business, Anko-san, Itachi said making Anko look at them both weirdly before she nodded. The trio sat there as they talked to one another, sometime also speaking to the ramen stand owner Tucci who the three saw as a nice middle-aged man who was happy to help any who needed help. He had a daughter their age Ayam who they had seen a few times. As Anko and Itachi spoke with Itachi, Naruto's sensor abilities picked up on something that he felt was irregular. He could feel the Kyuubi shinobi along with the Raikage enter the moment they entered the village. The Raikage stood out among the other two since his power was enormous, the same as his father and his Jiji. Naruto hoped of the stool and stood in the middle of the empty street as he looked in the direction of where the signature was coming from. Naruto-kun, what is it? Anko asked as she and Itachi followed him. One of the Kyuubi shinobi, he said already putting the two on alert. He not at the hotel with the others. He over by the Hyuga compound. Why is he there? Naruto said aloud making Itachi and Anko widen their eyes. You don't think he is going to kidnap a Hyuga do you? Anko asked since they were both aware that Kyumo for some reason desired the Hyuga clan dojutsu, the Byakugan. Let's go check it out, he said as the two nodded and headed towards the Hyuga compound. It only took a few minutes before they arrived on one of the buildings opposite the Hyuga compound, and Naruto immediately began scanning the area for the Kyumo shinobi he could sense. After a moment of search, he saw a black-clad figure against one of the outer walls, showing it to be the Kyumo shinobi with the forehead protector covering his right eye. In his right arm their eyes widened when they saw the Hyuga heiress, Hinata Hyuga, unconscious in his left arm. "Anko, go warn my father." "Now," he said as Anko did not need to be told twice before taking off as fast as she could. "All the clan heads are at that gathering." He knew the head of the Hyuga clan would not be here, Itachi said as Naruto nodded. "We have to buy some time. We can't let him get away." Naruto and Itachi took a deep breath, knowing this could go very badly, but they were shinobi of the lead now and it was their duty to protect the people who lived there. As the Kyumo shinobi was about to move both boys through shuriken towards him, the Kyumo shinobi sensed them coming and dodged out the way and landed a little to his left. He looked to his left and his eyes widened a little when Naruto appeared a little in front of him with the shusui unsheathed and descending towards his head. He expressed interest in the black sword for a moment before he grabbed a kunai from his right pocket and blocked the strike, though buckled a little from the strength of the blade and saw his kunai crack in a few places. However, when he blocked and focused on Naruto, Itachi appeared to the side and grabbed Hinata from the man's grasp. They both heard the man curse loudly as Itachi jumped away as fast as he could, with Naruto doing the same. They regrouped with each other while protecting Hinata. "Give me the girl, brats. You don't want to piss me off," he said, taunting them. "We are shinobi of the leaf. We will not let you kidnap one of our own," Naruto said back. The man laughed before making a few hand seals. "Let's see if the you brats can live up to what you claim," he said. "Raiton, Dendu Underi." A thin wire of lightning erupted from his midsection and shot all around him and toward Naruto and Itachi, aiming for their stomach as if wanting to bisect them. Naruto jumped in the air while Itachi managed to jump just before the man performed the jutsu. When Naruto looked at Itachi, he saw red and 3 tomos in each eye. Sharingan, he believed Itachi used it to predict the man's movement. As they jumped, the Kyumo appeared in front of Naruto and kicked the small blonde and knocked him to the ground. He did the same to Itachi, but with the Sharingan activated, Itachi managed to dodge the swipes and kick them and was giving him but could not attack due to having Hinata still in his arms. Itachi gritted his teeth a little since he could not fight back, but then heard Naruto voice. "Water style, water bullet," he said as balls of water made their way towards the Kyumo ninja. The Kyumo nin jumped out of the way, enabling Itachi to appear in the gardens of the Hyuga compound and lay her on the ground before going back to the battle. Returning, he saw Naruto with his blade redrawn, blocking quick and powerful strikes from the Kyumo nin. Though Naruto was managing to block, the man's superior strength forced him to get pushed back and against a wall. The Kyumo nin grinned before finding kunai being thrown towards him. Cursing again, he humped back and away from the kunai. Naruto and Itachi then stood next to one another and charged towards the enemy. Naruto threw punches and palm strike towards the Kyumo nin, specifically trying to hit a few of the weak and pressure points that Tsunade and Shizun had told him about. Itachi meanwhile was trying to sweep his legs with his Uchiha style. They tried pushing him back, but the man was an adult and his physical strength was superior, so they used their smaller bodies to dodge his strike, which were quite slow, and were able to dodge them. Though he did manage to land a few hits on the two, he was surprised that they just kept getting back up and throwing strikes toward him. He swore he even felt a low-level genjutsu get put on him before he managed to quickly get RD of it with a pulse of chakra. The Uchiha, he thought, since he knew with the Sharingan, Itachi would try and put him in a genjutsu and trap him. The Kyumo ninja started getting annoyed when the two genin did not let up before they both jumped back. "Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu," Itachi called as a fireball erupted from his mouth and toward the ninja. The ninja saw it coming and jumped in the air to dodge it, but his eyes widened when he saw Naruto was now in front of him and had shusui drawn out again. Naruto swung his blade just as the Kyumo nin tried to push himself back. Despite the dodge, the tip of the shusui sunk into the man and slashed him across the chest. Naruto landed next to Itachi, both who got in their stances again as the Kyumo nin fell back a little and gripped his chest. "You little shit," he said as he checked his wound and saw it was shallow but went across most of his chest. "What are these kids? They are no ordinary children," he said and looked into their eyes. Itachi with his Sharingan and Naruto with his violet eyes gazed intensely towards him. "Raiton, Saji Furashu," he said as his two hands surged with lightning and put them together. He did not realize that Itachi had just coped his jutsu when he saw the hand signs. Just as the attack was about to be sent off, another strong chakra signature appeared around them and a blur shot out from the Hyuga compound and struck the Kyumo ninja in the chest. Hack Sanjuni Sho, the Hyuga cried out as he struck the Kyumo nin 32 times in the chest. When it was over, Naruto and Itachi watched as the man stumbled back a little before blood spurted out of his mouth. His eyes rolled into the back of his head and dropped to the ground dead. They looked at the Hyuga and saw he looked just like the clan head Hisashi, making them realize he was Hisashi Hyuga, the younger twin brother of Hisashi Hyuga. Hisashi glared at the fallen man before he made his way over to the two boys and gave them a bow. "Thank you for protecting Hinata." They were about to respond before Naruto felt a large mass of multiple chakras appeared. From their right they looked over and watched as Naruto's parents, Jiraiya, Tsunade and the clan heads appeared along with a few Umbu. Naruchan. Itachi Kyuin. Naruto and Itachi winced a little when they heard their mother's voices and quickly found themselves glomped by Kushina and Mikoto, who began to threat and check them over. Both saw the bruises that were beginning to form on their faces and glared towards the fallen shinobi. When the two mothers were told by the two boys they were okay, Kushina nodded and joined Minato, who was speaking to Hisashi with the others, while Mikoto hung back with the boys. Naruto watched as Itachi went a little red with Mikoto still checking him over and was planting kisses on him. From where he could stand he could hear his mother saying they should check on the twins and Mina. Even now, they are all she can think about, Naruto thought a little bitterly as he looked down at the ground as he shook slightly. Shaking his head a little, Naruto began to walk away and just made his way home, while Itachi gave him a sad glance while Mikoto just wondered what had him so down. Meanwhile Tsunade and Hiruzen, who had heard what Kushina said, looked at Naruto with sadness in their eyes. "We need to talk to them about this Sarutobi-sensei. Look at Naruchan, even if he doesn't necessarily show it, the way they treat him is affecting him. I heard from Shizen that he is distancing himself from the twins. It's like he doesn't want them to get too close to him," said Tsunade, worry clear in her voice. "While I agree with you, Tsunade-chan, the question still remains, how would we get them to see what they are doing to young Naruto? I doubt they even realize that their actions, or rather, inaction, is causing him any sort of grief," he replied, also worried about the young boy that he saw as a grandson. "At moment the only thing we can do is wait and see if they will realize their mistake before it is too late." Chapter 7. Lessons. Naruto stood at the north gate of Konoha as he waited for his team and sensei to arrive so they could go on their mission. Today marked their first C-rank mission ever and Naruto could not help but feel a little excited. The night the Kyumo shinobi had attempted to kidnap the Hyuga heiress, the Hyuga clan as well as the Shinobi Council had been extremely thankful towards him, Itachi and Enko, since if it was not for Naruto and Itachi holding the ninja back and Enko going to warn the Hokage, then they may have lost the Hyuga heiress. As a reward, they made the rescue a completed a ranked mission and all three genin got the pay. It also set a new record as Naruto, Itachi and Enko became the youngest team to ever go on an A-ranked mission. Mikoto of course gave them a small scolding, but they knew that was just the mother in her talking. Though she was extremely proud of her first genin team and knew from that moment that Naruto, Itachi and Enko would go on to do great things. They had their test the next day, which was basically to let Mikoto see their level of strength. She was not disappointed and, on more than one occasion, had found herself on the defensive before managing to push them back and subdue them. It made the trio realize that Mikoto was a very powerful woman who had rightfully earned the title of Fire Mistress of the Leaf. Since then, for the next 6 months, they went on simple D-rank missions all around the Leaf Village. They came up with a simple routine, which was to perform D-rank missions in the morning, and then they would break for a lunch break before meeting up again for a few hours in the afternoon to train. Mikoto had managed to find certain aspects with each of the three to help train them, in which she was thankful for, since she was not the type to leave one out while focusing on the other two. With Itachi, she helped him with his ninjutsu and genjutsu since they both had the Sharingan. Enko was taijutsu and she would spend a good hour or more just blazing it out with the girl while also focusing on her elemental ninjutsu, which she decided to learn after seeing the two boys use theirs for the first time. Not surprising, she had fire element as well, which was a bonus. With Naruto she struggled with for a short while before she could also help him with his taijutsu and kenjutsu. Though she used a tanto as a weapon other than a katana, the dynamic were similar, plus it gave Naruto plenty of time to practice his kenjutsu skills against his sensei and improve them. As Naruto thought of his skills, he looked down to the ground and stared at his two hands. He had always wondered what could help him stand out from his parents and teachers, since they were all very world-renowned. His father had the Hiroshin, his mother had her kenjutsu and both had fuinjutsu, Mikoto had her fire jutsu, Tsunade her healing skills and super strength, Jiraiya had his toad jutsus, Kakashi had his Chidori, Itachi his Sharingan and Sarutobi with his Bojutsu and decades of experience. He had wondered what would set him apart from the rest. And it was 1 month ago when he finally found just what that was. Flashback. Naruto panted a little as Tsunade threw another punch towards which he managed to jump to the side and dodge at the last second. He regained his footing and charged towards Tsunade. This was one of their normal taijutsu spars that Tsunade began ever since she began teaching him. They were in a small training on the Senju compound that they used recently over the few years since Tsunade was the last of her clan and she did not want to see her ancestral home collect dust. He threw his right fist towards her which she caught almost effortlessly in her right hand. When she did, Naruto's right leg came up and swung from the side as well. Tsunade brought up her left elbow and blocked the strike. "Got you now, Naruto-chan," she said with a smirk before her eyes flickered to the side to see his left fist now coming toward her, having used the momentum to push another strike towards her. It was about to strike but she dodged the strike by moving her head to the side before she spun around on the spot and threw him towards the other end of the area. Naruto managed to land on his feet but due to the speed he was going at, he fell into his behind and hit a tree. From the sidelines Shizen and Hiruzen winced a little at the impact but saw that Naruto was already getting back up before he went forward and charged again, quickly engaging Tsunade again. Naruto-chan sure has spirit. He and Tsunade-sama have been going at it for 2 hours now and he is still going. Shizen commended though she was not surprised given the Uzumaki stamina. Naruto-kun has come a long way in these few years. Hiruzen commented amazed at how far the young blonde had come since he began his training with them. "Are you and Tsunade still planning on showing him the Shozen Jutsu?" he asked as Shizen nodded. Tsunade-sama wants him to know it just in case of emergencies plus his chakra control has only gotten better. I dare say a few more years and his control might surpass my own. She had even been thinking of giving him the Sozo Sensei on his forehead, but she wanted to leave that decision to Naruto. Hiruzen nodded, knowing that while the Sozo Sensei Tsunade created was indeed amazing, it had its drawbacks by shortening one's lifespan. Back with Naruto, Naruto panted as Tsunade kept throwing him around like a rag doll. Her taijutsu is just too strong. It is no wonder she hardly needs to use any ninjutsu or genjutsu. He thought before his eyes widened when her hand glowed blue and she clenched it into a fist. "Be ready, Naruto-chan," she shouted to him before she brought her fist down to the earth, causing the ground in front of her to begin cracking apart and causing the earth to tear apart. The ground around Naruto felt like an earthquake and did his best to keep his footing. Tsunade's strength was always going to be a game changer, even if she was the one who was winning. When he was about to jump out of the war zone, he felt his foot get stuck and trapped between a piece of the rubble and kept him in place as the ground in front of him burst open and debris went flying towards him. Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizen saw his foot had gotten stuck and were about to dash over to help him when they stopped and watched Naruto perform a feat Hiruzen and Tsunade never thought they would ever see again. Not knowing what to do, Naruto unconsciously channeled chakra into his hands and grasped his palms together. Just as the rubble was about to hit, pillars of wood suddenly shot out of the ground and formed a protective dome around him which stopped the debris in its tracks. As the shaking stopped, complete silence was heard as Naruto looked at the wooden dome in front of him with eyes widened so much they looked like they would fall out. To the side the 3 older shinobi were in a similar state as Tsunade had even dropped to her knees as she saw one of her grandfather's techniques. "It's not possible," Tsunade muttered, trying to understand what just happened while Shizen was muttering that it had to be some kind of genjutsu and tried to dispel it. "Naruto," Hiruzen muttered as he looked at the boy who was in a similar state to them. "Just what are you going to become?" End flashback. A day I will never forget. Naruto thought as he and his 3 teachers came to the conclusion that somehow, which they were still trying to figure out, that Naruto had received the most legendary bloodline Konoha had ever had, the Mokuton. For the time being they kept it a secret, since if word got out to enemies of Konoha or even to some of the higher-ups in the village like the elders or Danzo that Naruto had the legendary Mokuton of the Shodai Hokage, Naruto's life would never be the same. "Naruto-kun," he heard snapping him out of his daze as he saw Mikoto along with Itachi and Anko at her side coming towards him. "Do you have everything you need?" Mikoto asked as he showed a scroll in his right hand. "So to recap, what was the mission again?" Naruto asked, wanting to familiarize with the mission as much as possible. "It's very simple really. We are to take this scroll," Mikoto said, waving a small scroll in her hands before sealing it away into her wrist. "And we have to deliver it to Mifune, the general of Iron Country. The scroll has updates on the next shipment of chakra metal that we get traded with from Iron Country." "I thought Iron Country was a neutral country." Plus it has samurais, not ninja. Anko asked. It is, but even though it does not align itself with the other nations, it does trade with them since Iron Country is a cold nation and it needs things like food imported since they can't grow food well in cold climates. Then let's go. I can't wait. This will be my first time out of the village. Naruto said. Itachi quickly said the same while Anko stayed quiet. Team 13 set off from Konoha to the cold conditions of Iron Country. 2 days later. Naruto, Mikoto, Itachi and Anko sat on 2 logs as they stopped for a short moment to take a breather from tree jumping and to get some food in their stomachs. 2 days of traveling were an interesting experience for the 3 genin since their D ranks only ever took a few hours at the most. Naruto was currently eating a few onigiri he had made prior to the mission. Another thing his Nachon Shizun had drilled into his head was how to make simple basic meals that could be taken on missions and which would not take up much room. Onigiri had quickly gone to the top of the list and he made sure to make enough for the trip there and back. Mikoto and Itachi were eating some leftover stew that Mikoto had made for dinner before they left while Anko was eating some dango she acquired before they left Konoha. As they ate, Naruto began to pick up on multiple signatures closing in around them and were coming towards them at a fast pace. He looked towards Mikoto who had already picked it up as had Anko and Itachi. The 4 nodded to each other and silently readied their weapons. A minute later a swarm of arrows suddenly flew out of the woods around them and hit them, only for all 4 members to burst into smoke and be replaced by a log. Naruto blocked a sword strike from an overweight bandit before he kicked the man in the gut, which knocked him back and knocked him out. A dozen or so men, who were obviously bandits, ran into the small area where they had been eating. They obviously thought they could win against 3 children and a woman. Where did they go? One asked as they looked over the logs that were now on the ground. Just as another was about to speak, a rustle from above them made them look up to see Team 13 drop out of the trees and in the center of them before they began to attack. Naruto dropped between 2 and managed to split kick them both in the face, making them get knocked back. When one of them got back up, he ducked a strike and landed a strong strike on his left kneecap, making it break in the process, as well as the bandit fell down holding his knee in pain. The other got up, but before he could do anything Naruto threw a bunch of shuriken towards him, pinning him to the tree. From his side he watched as Mikoto and Itachi easily took out the bandits around them, though Mikoto just looked bored if anything and was simply chopping the back of their necks and quickly tying them up or drove her tanto through their chests. He watched as Anko shot a snake out of her sleeve, to which the snake then bit down on the man's jugular, causing blood to pour out of his throat and drop to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Anko had killed and he noticed she had no problem with it. It made him wonder if she had ever killed before. He dodged a swing of a large wooden club and kicked the man square in the face, making him fly back and hit a tree. He sensed around and felt there were only a few of the bandits left, which quickly were taken out by Itachi and Mikoto. However, he suddenly felt a small burst of killing intent hit him. It was nothing in comparison to what he was used to during his spars with either Mikoto or Tsunade, but it was enough for him to notice it. His body acting on autopilot, he turned round, readied his blade and threw it forward. When he did, he felt a small warm splash hit his face. He wiped his other hand over the wet splash and looked at his hand in front him. Blood! When he looked forward, he saw a man in his early 20s wearing similar clothing to the other bandits around them with a chipped sword in his hand. Naruto's blade was in front of him, currently stabbing the young man in the chest. Naruto had a look of horror appear on his face as he realized what he had done, and his hand began to shake. His eyes stared into the man's brown ones and watched as they suddenly rolled into the back of his. Naruto slowly took his blade out of his chest and just stood there as the man fell to the ground as his breathing stopped completely. Naruto? Mikoto asked from behind him as Anko was seen standing behind Itachi, who had just thrown up. He had taken his first life as well by snapping one of the bandits' necks. Anko patted his back gently as Itachi just stared down at the ground. I killed him. I didn't mean to, it just happened. My B-body reacted on its own. He said, stuttering as Mikoto closed the distance between them and placed her hands on his shoulders. The first kill is always the hardest to take, she thought as Naruto suddenly ran from her grasp and, like Itachi had done moments ago, threw up behind a bush. As he did that, Mikoto began collecting the bodies of the dead bandits and placed them in a pile. She then performed a few fire jutsus and set the bodies on fire so that the bodies could be properly disposed of. The ones that were still alive did not stay alive for long before Mikoto slashed their throats with her tanto and added them to the burning fire. Afterward, her gaze softened towards Naruto and her son. This was one of the reasons she wanted this C rank. The way to Iron Country was known for having a lot of bandit encampments, and she wanted Naruto and Itachi to have their first kill. It was always tough for a genin to kill, but killing was in the job description of being a shinobi. She saw Anko was okay, which she knew she was. Anko had already killed due to her past tutoring. By having their first kill, they would not hesitate to do so again later on. Though she was 13 when she had her first kill, and the memory of the man she killed still appeared in her head from time to time, but Naruto and Itachi were strong, a lot stronger than others their age, and she knew deep down that they could take it, handle it, and rise above it. "Come on," she said, patting Naruto and Itachi's shoulders and rubbing them gently. "Let's get moving. We should cover as much ground as we can while we still have light," she said, making the three genin nod. Naruto and Itachi were a little slower than normal, but that's because their first kills were on their minds and would be for a few more days. 2 days later. "The scroll we were sent to deliver, Mifune-sama," Mikoto said as she, Naruto, Itachi, and Anko stood in a large office that had numerous blades and samurai armors decorating around it. On one of the walls was 3 picture frames hanging up showing 3 men all dressed in samurai armor and all looking very powerful and intimidating. "Thank you, Uchiha-san," a man said from behind the desk as he took the scroll politely from her and began to read the contents of it. Mifune was an elderly man, so to speak, perhaps in his late 40s, early 50s. He had long purplish hair that showed signs of graying along with bandages that wrapped around the top of his head along with a small mustache. He wore a simple navy blue kimono with black sandals. Strapped to his side, Naruto saw a katana with a black handle strapped to his side. Beside him were 2 samurai wearing the traditional Iron Country armor along with the helmets, which Naruto had to admit looked a little strange. After a few minutes of reading with an expressionless look on his face, Mifune nodded and gave them a small smile. "The terms in this scroll are agreeable. Allow me a few minutes to write up a reply scroll," he said as he brought out a blank scroll and some ink. He began to write as the team stood there silently as they waited. After he finished, he handed the new scroll back to Mikoto, who bowed and thanked him. They were about to leave, but Mifune stopped them. "If I were you, Uchiha-san, I would stay in town for a day or 2. There is a strong blizzard that will be coming through the area tonight. Anyone who gets caught in it will most likely freeze to death," he said. "I see. Thank you for the information and looking out for my team," Mikoto said, bowing to him again to show her thanks. As Naruto, Itachi and Anko began to leave the room, Mifune used a few hand signals to send a silent message to Mikoto. The 2 boys had looked so emotionless and both had a tired and worn-out look on their faces. "What is wrong with the 2 boys?" Mikoto sighed a little sadly and made a few hand signs in return. "First kill." Mifune immediately had a look of understanding cross his face, since it did explain everything. He nodded to her as they left and sat back in his chair while putting his sword in his lap. He noticed Naruto's blade in his right hand, couldn't help but feel intrigued. He knew that not many from the Leaf practiced in Kenjutsu, and it made him a little curious at how he was progressing. Early next morning, Naruto lay on his bed as just stared up at the ceiling spread all over his futon with the image of the man he killed still on his mind. Every time he tried to fall asleep, he would see that man standing in front of him. "I wonder if this happens to others who kill for the first time," he thought as he looked out the window to see it was still dark outside, though the morning sun was slowly pushing its way through. He looked over to see Itachi was asleep, having spoken with Mikoto for a few hours about it the night before, and he looked a lot better than he did. Mikoto did the same for Naruto, however even with her words, it would not leave his mind. Realizing he would not be getting any more sleep for the time being, he got out of his futon and put his clothes on. He carried Shusui in his right hand and made his way out of his room, which Mifune had kindly given them during their stay in Iron Country, and not get caught in the blizzard during the night. Making his way through the hallways as well as looking at some painting and decorative samurai armors that were presented on display, Naruto eventually stopped at one of the indoor training room that they were told they could use. Since the environment of Iron Country was not the best to train in, the samurai had multiple giant rooms made for the sole purpose of training. In the room Naruto went in, there were training dummies made of both wood and stone, a large circle about 10 meters wide for small-time spars to take part in, as well as racks for weapons of various kinds. He went over towards one of the wooden training dummies and unsheathed Shusui and began to train with his sword. The blade didn't feel very heavy to Naruto anymore, since he had carried it around for nearly 6 months and had both grown accustomed to it as well as got physically stronger. For about 30 minutes Naruto danced around the wooden dummy, slashing and stabbing at the straw dummy, though since he had no specific sword style, he was just sort of going with the strikes. From behind him a pair of eyes rested on him as they watched him attack the straw dummy. Where Naruto was, he could feel someone watching him but did not let on that he knew. They did not feel like a threat but more like they were curious. As if they wanted to see what he would do next. A few moments later the figure that was watching Naruto dashed forward at great speed with a katana in their hand and swung towards Naruto. Naruto, feeling them suddenly appear behind him, turned around as quick as he could and blocked the strike with Shusui. Turning around he was surprised to see Mifune standing there in front of him examining both Naruto and Naruto's sword. "Lord Mifune," Naruto said in surprise as he quickly sheathed his sword and gave the general of Iron Country a bow. "My apologies for engaging you," Naruto said but quickly saw that Mifune was waving it off. "I engaged you young Namikes. It is I who should apologize. I wanted to see how well you acted with a blade since I saw you carrying it the other day. I must admit your reaction time with it is quite impressive. Thank you Lord Mifune," Naruto said, a little taken back that one of the best sword users in the world was complimenting him. "Though by your footwork and the way you hold the blade, you do not have a style for it?" he asked as Naruto shook his head. "Does your mother Kushina Uzumaki not teach you? She is an expert in kenjutsu last I checked." Since he found it odd that a boy with a mother as well versed with a blade as Kushina was, did not have a sword style already. Mifune watched as Naruto shifted a little as well as saw this small look of bitterness cross his face. "My mother is a busy woman. She does not have the time to teach me and continue her other duties in the village," he said looking away. "I see," Mifune said before his face softened a bit. "May I?" he asked, wanting to take a look at Shusui. Naruto was a little hesitant since his sword was becoming one of the most precious items he had, but allowed it. Mifune took it and immediately noticed that it was heavier than other blades. He also noticed how different looking it was since the metal was black with a red wave-like pattern going down the middle of the blade ending at the tip, but admired its unique beauty. "This is a strong blade. A blade meant for a lot of power and physical strength. To be able to hold a blade that is as heavy as it is at your age is impressive. Though you would need a style to fit this," he said as Naruto nodded. "Come," Mifune said as he gave Naruto Shusui back and headed towards one of the sparring circles. They stood in the circle and Mifune drew his blade out of its sheath as Naruto did the same. "Come at me with the intent to kill Naruto-san. Otherwise don't attack at all." Naruto bit his lip a little but nodded. Taking a deep breath, he gripped the handle of Shusui in a tight grip though not too tight and went forward towards Mifune. He swung at Mifune who easily blocked the strike with his blade and first acted on the defensive, letting Naruto get a few strikes in. Every strike Naruto sent towards Mifune, the experienced samurai blocked it each time and blocked it with little difficulty. "You must try much harder than that," Mifune said to Naruto as he spun, catching Naruto off balance and knocked Naruto in the chest with the back on his sword and making him stumble back. Shaking his head, Naruto went forward again, this time striking at a fast speed and trying to catch Mifune off guard. Mifune though once again blocked with ease and dodged the strikes. Naruto swung Shusui a little higher than before and brought it down at a greater speed and with a bit more power behind it. Mifune locked his blade with Naruto's, making a loud clang sound out through the training area. Naruto tried to push back but Mifune's strength was greater and Mifune pushed him back before pushing him off a little bit and like earlier knocked Naruto back with the back of his sword. Naruto breathed in and out a little heavily, getting a little frustrated that he could not land a single strike on Mifune. He charged forward for a third time but this time Mifune locked his sword with Naruto, spun it around in Naruto's hand before disarming Naruto with a swift chop to the back of his hand, making him drop Shusui. "No!" Naruto thought as he watched Mifune swung his sword towards him, obviously putting Naruto on the post and wanting him to think of his own way to get his sword back. As the strike was about to hit him, Naruto took a leap of faith. "Please let this work," he thought as he waited for the strike to hit before he felt the air shift a little. Raising his hands up, he threw his hands in front of him and caught the blade in his palms. Mifune for one was a little taken back by the sudden move. The strike may not have been very strong since he was holding back a lot, but still to catch the blade in two palms like that had impressed Mifune. "Not bad," he thought as he slid the blade out of Naruto's palms. He swung again towards Naruto but this time Naruto used his stature to his use, ducked, and rolled towards his blade. Picking the Shusui up, he brought it up and deflected another strike. "Not bad. Now you are thinking like a swordsman, however, you should never drop your sword in battle as your opponent may use it against you," Mifune said, and leading to example, pushed Naruto away again, but this time knocking Shusui out of his just enough to make it fly in the air. Mifune reached and grabbed it before holding the two blades against Naruto's neck in a scissor-like form. Naruto meanwhile was a little awestruck at how quickly that just happened, reaffirming how strong Mifune was. Mifune examined the boy. He has talent, that's for sure. If he works hard enough and find the right style, then he will be a force to be reckoned with. Mifune gave the sword back to Naruto, who accepted it before taking a few steps back. He sheathed his sword, but kept his hand on the handle. Again, he said, making Naruto look at him for a few seconds before smiling internally and charging forward as the two sparred for the next few hours, Mifune fully believing that Naruto was going to be a force to be reckoned with as he got older. One day later, Naruto packed his belongings and put them away into a storage seal as he and his team prepared to set off back for the Leaf Village. Itachi, Mikoto, and Anko were waiting for him just outside the room as Naruto finished the last of his packing. Shusui was strapped to his side as he patted the handle. Having sparred with Mifune a lot during the stay, Naruto felt that he somewhat improved as a swordsman and was taught that to be a great swordsman, his sword must become one with him, like it was an extension of his body. Mifune also drilled into him to have patience, since patience was a key element for a swordsman. After their last spar, Mifune had been impressed with Naruto and told him to get stronger so that one day Naruto and Mifune could have a clash of swords like never before. As Naruto was about to leave, a small breeze went through the room, making Naruto stop, and a chakra signature appeared suddenly. However, it disappeared as quickly as it came. Turning around, he saw on one of the side tables a slightly large scroll now stood out. He went towards it and saw a note on the side. This style has no master and has yet to be mastered. It will teach you the basics and fundamentals but will allow you to create your own techniques. Perhaps you can be the first. Mifune. Naruto's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He was thankful that the general of Iron Country was nice enough to point out a few of his flaws and help improve them as well as a part with him, but now he really had to thank the man, for he believed he had found a style that would fit him. Naruto took the scroll and read the name of the side of it. Itoryu, One Sword Style. Weird name. Naruto thought as he opened it up and took a few glances at it before a grin appeared on his face. This is perfect. Naruto muttered before quickly sealing the scroll into a storage seal on his arm. As he left the room, he didn't notice Mifune standing with his back to the wall beside the window with his arms crossed and eyes shut. I look forward to seeing who you become, young Uzumaki, he said before disappearing. Naruto met back up with his team, looking back for a second at the compound before they finally began making their way back to Konoha. Chapter 8. Chunin Exams Written Test. And so do the three of you understand the importance of this? Minato asked in full Hokage mode as he sat behind his desk with Team 13 and Mikoto standing in front of him. Yes, Hokage-sama, Naruto, Itachi and Anko replied back in a respectful tone. Very good, the three of you are the only team from the Leaf Village this time around who will be competing in the Chunin exams, therefore the village has a lot of high hopes for the three of you. Yes, Hokage-sama, they said again. Mikoto watched her team with pride evident in her eyes. And above all else, give it your all and know that Konoha and all its inhabitants, shinobi and civilian, are behind you 100% and will be rooting for you every step of the way. The three of you are the best crop of genin we have had in a very long time. With what your sensei has been telling me, the three of you are more than ready for these exams, Minato said, looking at Naruto with pride evident on his face. Though Naruto remained emotionless and looked at his father with slightly bored eyes. Thank you, Hokage-sama. We will do our best, the three said in unison. Minato nodded as he gave them their forms. Remember, you need those forms to get into the exams. So if you lose those forms, then none of you will be able to enter. The Chunin exams this year will be held in Suna, which is 3 days' journey away. The exams begin in 5 days, so you will need to get moving by tomorrow, he said as the three genin nodded and bowed to their Hokage before they turned to leave the room. Naruto, your Ka-chan would like to know what you want for dinner this evening since you won't be home for a while. She said she will make you whatever you want, Minato said, thinking Naruto would be smiling a big smile since he always enjoyed Kushina's cooking. Naruto heard his father and slowly turned around, which surprised Minato and Mikoto when they saw he was looking at them still with an emotionless look on his face. Tell Ka-chan not to worry. I'm having dinner round Gigi's tonight, he said. Before either could say anything, he shunshined away, leaving the two adults as the only ones left in the room. What was that about? Minato asked to himself as he looked at where his eldest was standing before turning towards Mikoto. Mikoto was also looking towards the spot where he had been standing with a similar thought in her head. She had begun to notice more and more lately that Naruto was becoming very distant, and one would even say a little cold towards his parents. He even tried to keep away from his siblings, though she quickly saw that was not possible due to Mina and Mito's clinginess. Plus he had been spending a lot more time at their compound with Itachi and Enko. "I'm sure it is just nerves," Mikoto answered. "I bet the shock of him being entered in the Chunin exam has made him a little nervous and a little withdrawn. We were all at that stage when we went to our Chunin exams. Do you remember Kushina during hers when she was 14? She asked, making Minato chuckle at the memory. Kushina had been so excited to being put into the Chunin exams that when the day actually arrived, she became a nervous wreck and on more than one occasion tried to pull out. Though when her confidence finally came back, she made sure everyone knew that she was going to become a Chunin and kick their ass to the moon and back. Naruto is probably just handling it differently. We all do handle certain situations differently." Minato sat there for a few moments before smiling. Yeah, you are probably right. I'm sure that's what it is. Though Kushina will be a little crushed that he won't be here tonight, but I'm sure she will understand," he said before saying goodbye to Mikoto and preparing to face the Kage's greatest enemy of all time, paperwork. Mikoto, meanwhile, as she left the room, had a frown marring on her face as she thought about her blonde-haired student and Genin. "Naruto, what is wrong? What are you trying to hide?" "The Uchiha compound." Mikoto shunshined back home and immediately sought out her eldest son to ask him about Naruto's actions towards his parents. She found in the backyard playing with his younger sister, smiling towards his little sister. She walked forward and said, "Itachi, I wish to ask you something about Naruto." "So you noticed then the way Naruto acts towards his family?" asked Itachi with a sad look on his face, as he thought about his closest friend and the problems he had at home. "Yes, I noticed. What is that about?" "He is so cold towards his parents and tries to push away his siblings," she asked, concerned about her students' well-being as well as the state of her best friend and rival's home. "When I first met Naruto we were both 7, as you remember," he stated, and the continued when his mother nodded. "Well, one of the first things I learned about him was that was very good at Fuinjutsu." "Yes, which is to be expected with who his parents are. I am sure that they taught him about Fuinjutsu at a young age, as is tradition of the Uzumaki clan," she stated, not knowing where this was going. It wasn't his parents who taught him Fuinjutsu, it was the Sandaime. In fact, his parents didn't even teach him the basics of chakra control, he learned it from Shizen-san," replied Itachi, pausing to let everything he said sink in. But why would he have to learn such things from other people? Surely if he had asked, his parents would have gladly taught him. She asked, not sure if she wanted to know the answer. Itachi just shook his head and looked towards Hokage Mountain, where you could just make out 2 figures on top of the Yondaime's head. Naruto did ask them to teach him, however ever since the twins were born they have become less attentive towards him. When Naruto asked his father and mother to teach him Fuinjutsu, his father simply gave him a book to give to the Sandaime when he took his lessons. He asked his mother to help him with his chakra and to learn about, and instead of making a shadow clone to do so, she told him that she was too busy and then passed him off to Shizen. Mikoto looked over at her son in shock and then towards the blonde speck on top of the mountain with sadness in her eyes. She couldn't understand what could possess 2 of her closest friends to act this way towards their son. "Why haven't you or anyone confronted them about how they treat Naruto? It's not how you think, they aren't doing it on purpose. They are unintentionally favoring the twins. As for why we haven't confronted them, Naruto told everyone not to. He thinks that it won't change anything, so he would rather endure it rather than have his parents think that he is starting things because he is jealous of the twins, which he is not," responded Itachi, smiling slightly as he turned towards his mother, which confused her greatly. After all, why would he be happy about that? Even after how his parents have treated him, albeit unintentionally, he loves his younger siblings to death. Mina, Mito, and Eiji mean the world to him, and he would fight to the death to ensure their safety. So, then his taijutsu and kenjutsu, they aren't anything that Minato or Kushina use, so who taught him? She asked, smiling sadly at the fact her student was suffering and she couldn't do anything about it. His taijutsu, as I'm sure you have realized, is a bastardized version of the Senju style and Goken. He was taught the Senju style by Tsunade-sama. However, the Senju style is defensive like the Uchiha style, so in order to counteract that problem he asked Gai-san to teach him Goken. Also, the Senju style and Goken were too restrictive for him, so he adjusted each style to work better with his body type," said Itachi as he made a face at little Ria which made her giggle and smile at her big brother. "I thought it seemed familiar, though I have trouble following it with my Sharingan. do you have the same problem? She asked, since even though he was younger Itachi's eyes were sharper than hers. Yes, I have much trouble following it since his style is more free-form than the normal structured style of either style, though I would be surprised if it was like that on purpose. Naruto and I are friends as well as rivals, so it would make sense for him to have something to counteract my eyes. You asked about his kenjutsu, correct? Itachi asked, still playing with Ria. Yes, I did. I have never seen anything like it in all of Hai no Kuni. She replied, smiling as she watched her eldest and youngest play. That would be because it is from Testa no Kuni and has never been used or mastered as, like his taijutsu, it is free-formed. Apparently Mifune-sama saw that Naruto was having trouble with his first kill and found Naruto training in kenjutsu, which at that point he didn't even have a style, just natural talent. They sparred while we waited out the storm at night. When we left, Mifune left him a scroll with the footwork and a challenge for him to become strong enough to face him on an equal footing one day. He said as he picked up Ria to take her inside for her nap, leaving his mother to mull over what she had been told. I will have to talk to Naruto to get the full story from him, though you can't help but be impressed that he has come so far with so little help. She thought, hoping to help the little boy whom she saw as a nephew. With Naruto. So you are going to be in the Chunin exams. Are you excited? Sarutobi asked Naruto as the two sat on top of the Shodaime Hokage's head on the Hokage monument as they looked over the village as the sun began to disappear and let night settle in. Beside him, Naruto gave him an excited smile. I am. I really want to test myself against other strong people from the other villages. The stronger the better, I say. Well, remember not to get into over your head. If you get too overconfident and cocky, then it may lead to your downfall. I have seen it do that to my shinobi during my life. Sarutobi lightly scolded, but Naruto nodded. I know, but I am just excited, that's all, he said, a complete 180 turn from what he was acting like earlier. Well, that is good then. Will you say goodbye to Tsunade and Shizune before you leave? He asked, with Naruto quickly nodding. Good, I know they will miss you while you are gone. Those two will miss having their little blonde sunshine not be around for a while. Sarutobi then laughed at the pout on Naruto's face at being called a blonde sunshine. I will miss them too, but it won't be for long. Plus, if I make it into the final round, you will all come and watch me, right? Just try and stop us, Hiruzen said, making Naruto smile brightly. You would need an army of shinobi and more to stop Tsunade from going, he thought, since Tsunade truly did love and care for Naruto just like she did for Nawaki, but in a more maternal way. The same could be said for Shizune, since she had a big soft spot for the young blonde Uzumaki. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Shaking his head, Sarutobi then put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and gave him a serious look and telling him to pay close attention. Naruto knew this was his Gigi slipping into his Kami no Shinobi mode. Since there are going to be shinobi from other villages, there is a chance they will recognize you by your appearance and your name. Ninja of Kyuubi and IWA will most likely be participating, so you must be on your guard. He said as Naruto nodded. Especially after the Kyuubi incident here a year ago, we have become wary around them. I still don't understand why the alliance never happened. The Raikage said he knew nothing about the abduction and that the Kyuubi had done it on his own accord. I could feel his chakra Gigi. If he was lying, then his chakra would have been all over the place. He was telling the truth. Yes, well, unfortunately, Naruto, even with that statement, the word of a lone genin would not be enough to change the mind of your father and the Shinobi Council. Plus, due to your mother's past experiences with Kyuubi, she already did not like the fact that they were here in the village. Naruto snorted a little, which was very much unusual for him. He responded very sarcastically. Yes, because those two were going to listen to me even if it was enough. Hiruzen frowned a little at the statement, but Naruto quickly changed the subject. I am also guessing that using my hidden bloodline is also a big no-no for the Chunin exams? He said, despite already knowing the answer. Yes, Naruto, it is imperative that no one knows you have the Mokuton until you are older and strong enough to fight off most threats. Because other villages might try to have me taken out if they find out? He asked as Hiruzen nodded his head. The Mokuton Naruto is recognized as one of the strongest bloodlines in the entire world. It is rivaled only by the Sharingan, yet many believe it is superior than the Dojutsu. The power to control and suppress the power of a tail beast is a power that many will desire. Plus, there are people in the village that might try to take advantage of it. He said as Hiruzen's face darkened a little. Yes. There are those in the shadows of the Konoha that will try to use that power, which could end up hurting the leaf more than helping it. he said as his thoughts trekked first to a few members of the councils who were known to be rather power-hungry before it settled on his old teammate and Konoha's warhawk Danzo. If Danzo ever gets his claws into Naruto, the man would not stop until Konoha is under his control. He thought before Naruto and Hiruzen let silence take over. One thought about who and what he would face in the future while the other thought of the obstacles that his surrogate grandson would one day have to face. 5 days later. A cloaked covered Team 13 trekked through the sands of the desert as they walked towards the giant gate of the Sunagakure. The gates were made of massive stone and had 2 Chunin guards similar to what Konoha had stationed at the gate. Halt, state your names and purpose for coming to the Sunagakure. One of the Chunin said as Mikoto took off her hood and showed her Konoha headband. Mikoto Uchiha with her Genin team, here for the Chunin exams, she said as she handed the Chunin some forms as they looked it over. After a minute of looking, the guards nodded their heads. You're all a little late, aren't you? The exams start in an hour and most of the team are either already there or are heading that way. We got caught up in a sandstorm on the way here, so we had to take cover. We should have been here yesterday afternoon, but we had to bunker down for a day and let the storm pass. The Chunin both nodded in understanding since sandstorms were very common in the desert of Suna. If you got caught in one or attempted to brave it, then you most likely would not make it. Okay, well, the Chunin exams are taking place in the academy building on the west side of the village. You will probably see a few team head in that direction, so just follow them, one of the Chunin said as Mikoto and the 3 genin all nodded and walked on through. Team 13 quickly made their way through the gates and headed towards their lodgings, which were at the Desert Possum Hotel. Once there, they deposited their bags while Naruto, Itachi and Anko kept the things they knew they would need for these exams. Once done, Mikoto led the trio towards the academy building on the east side. As they made their way there, they spotted a few other teams from the other villages. One was a group from Grass Country if the headbands were anything to go by, while another was from the rain. They kept their guard just in case until after 10 minutes they arrived at the academy building. Mikoto stopped at the entrance and turned to look at her team, a proud smile marring on her face. You all have everything you need, right? She asked as the trio nodded at her. Know that the 3 of you have made me so proud this past year and are about to do something that very few people can say they have done within the space of a year. I know the 3 of you are going to go on to do great things if what I have seen from the 3 of you is anything to go by. I know the 3 of you can go all the way in this exam, but remember that in this exam not everything will be what it seems. So look underneath the underneath and pick out things that may seem little, but will end playing a big part in these exams. Naruto, Itachi and Enko smiled towards their teacher and in Itachi's case mother and bowed to her. Thank you for putting your faith in us, Mikoto sensei / Kaa-san, and thank you for helping us get to this point in our ninja careers. Without you, we probably would not have gotten this far. Leaning down, Mikoto placed a kiss on each of their foreheads, keeping her lips on Itachi's forehead a little longer than Naruto and Enko, and fought to keep any tears at bay. Though she had only been their sensei for a year, she had loved every moment of having the chance to train her eldest son and his 2 friends. We promise we will do our best and honor your teachings. They said together again as Mikoto stood to the side and allowed them entry into the building. How them all and show the world why the 3 of you will one day be legends, she whispered to herself as she watched them go. Taking a slow breath, she shined away and went to join the other Jonin instructors, wanting to watch as her team progressed through the exam. With Team 13. Naruto walked in the center with Itachi on his right and Enko on his left as the trio made their way through the hallways of the academy. As they walked in, a Chunin proctor instructed them that the exams was on the 3rd floor and in the room 3A. As soon as the man had said that, the 3 already knew something about this exam was already fishy. As they walked up the stairs of the academy building, once they got up the stairs they saw the room 3A in clear writing and saw a Grass Nin team head into the room. Enko, thinking nothing of it at first, walked forwards and went towards the door but stopped when she felt Naruto and Itachi's hand rest on her shoulders. Hold up, Enko, this is not our floor, he said, making her look at him in a confused manner. But the door is right there. 3A, she said, but by the look on their faces she guessed that was not quite the case. What number was the room again? He asked as Enko lazily told him it was 3A. Right, so then how many flights of stairs have we gone up so far? 2. She trailed off before her eyes widened a little as she realized what he was getting at. She turned back around and looked at the sign which read 3A. She gazed at it strongly for a moment before seeing the words flicker on it. A genjutsu, she whispered as the others 2 nodded. It caused her to groan. Ah, I can't believe I almost fell for that. She whined as Itachi gave an amused smirk across his face while Naruto put an arm around her shoulders. Don't worry, Enko-chan. It will happen to the best of us. That genjutsu I am guessing that is there to weed out the groups that are not ready for the exams. If they can't see through a simple genjutsu like that, then it means they are not ready. Since we noticed it, it means we are ready, Itachi added as they watched Anko's eyes ignite into flames as her drive to pass the exams got even stronger. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go kick some ass, she declared as she grabbed Naruto and Itachi's hand and began dragging them up the third flight of stair. When they finally got to their floor, they saw the real door that they required. They narrowed their eyes on this one to see if it was a genjutsu, but quickly their faces calmed, seeing it was the real one this time. They walked together and after taking a deep breath slid the door open and went inside. When they went in they felt a little nervous, though they never showed it. All around the room were genin teams that look a lot older than they were. Many were in their teens, and as they looked around saw that the oldest must have been about 16. Great, more kids. They heard one of them snort out, but Naruto quickly noticed that many of them were gazing at him. That kid looks familiar. You don't think he is the Kiroi Seiko's Yellow Flash kid, do you? Another whispered while others contemplated the idea. If he is, then this exam has got more fun, another said, showing from his headband he was from Kyuubi. If he is, then it must mean he is the Beniheim's Crimson Princess son too. Naruto breathed calmly as he, Itachi and Anko went and stood on one of the back walls. There are a lot of teams here, Anko muttered out as she looked over the teams before she smiled a blood-curdling smile. It just means there are more people to cut and make bleed. Both Naruto and Itachi rolled their eyes at their female teammate but figured it was good that she was at least confident. The two of them were confident, but they knew not to get too overconfident since getting cocky can easily lead to someone getting killed. Deciding to scope out the other teams, Naruto examined the other team looking for any weaknesses he thought they might have, as well looking to see what nation they came from. The first he noticed that a lot was from the minor nation like grass, rain, and even bird country. Since they were smaller in size, Naruto guessed they needed more Chunin level shinobi. There was about 2 from Kyuubi that kept sneaking glances towards him, but he also noticed there were no teams from Kiri. But he already knew why though. It was quickly known through Konoha that a civil war had erupted in the hidden mist village, and currently the Mizukage, who was known as Yagura, was at war with rebel forces that wanted him gone. From what Hiruzen had told him, it was due to Yagura wanting the bloodline eradicated, and he saw them as a threat. Naruto quickly figured that Yagura was not a man that should be left to be in charge of an entire village. Looking over the team once more, he was about to look away, having seen all the teams before his eyes locked in on a team that was on the other side of the room and leaning against the opposite wall. He knew immediately from their headbands they were from IWA, and they looked like an interesting trio. He also seemed interested in them since by the look of them they must have been the same age as Naruto, Itachi and Anko was. The first one he noticed was the biggest of them, who was easily the size of a middle-aged teen and was quite chubby. He wore standard red IWA clothing, and as for his feature, he had a very large round nose that stuck out like a sore thumb. Though the boy had a very happy-go-lucky expression on his face, indicating he must have been quite innocent and childlike. The other was the second male member, who for some reason just gave Naruto a bad feeling. He had long straw blonde hair that covered part of his left eye and wore clothes similar to Itachi, which were dark blue in color. His hand kept playing around with some white clay and looked like he was molding it into shapes. Naruto could see that Itachi had honed in on the same group and had his Sharingan activated very subtly, and guessed he felt something a little off about the blonde boy as well. As Itachi focused on his, Naruto eyes panned to the final member and the only girl of the group. She was quite pretty looking and had dark hair that stopped a little below her chin. She wore something similar to the big kid, but her left leg, instead of a red pants leg, was instead a mesh coat. When he started at her, she saw that she turned her head and looked in his direction. When she did, Naruto saw her eyes and saw they were a very exotic color of pink. Her eyes are really pretty, he thought to himself, having never seen an eye color like that before, noticing she narrowed her eyes and him and scowled a little. When she turned her head again to look away from him, a small burst of some smoke appeared at the front of the class, showing the form of Asuna Kunoichi. She was clearly a Jonin, and just by looking at her, Naruto, Itachi and Anko could tell she was someone with a lot of power behind her, and that she was a seasoned shinobi despite her young appearance. She had to have been in her early to mid-20s. She was fair-skinned with pupil-less brown eyes that were very cold-looking, and her hair was dark green with 2 bangs framing her face that were orange. She wore sleeveless, backless top and short tight pants, with 2 lapels on the front and the back. She wears an obi around her waist, as well as purple arm warmers which extend up to her shoulders, and has bandages around her tights and ankles. Alright meat bags, listen up and do not interrupt. My name is Pakura and I will be your proctor throughout the entire Chunin exams. From now until the end of the exams I will be your judge, jury and executioner. If I tell you to do something you do it. Is that understood? She declared as everyone nodded their heads. Everyone go around the tables and sit in the seat with your name on it, she said as everyone began moving around. Naruto found himself at the front and found out that he was sitting beside none other than the Iwa Kunoichi. Though she completely ignored him and made sure not to even look at him. Anko was in the middle room while Itachi was at the second to last row. The trio was completed separated. The first test is a written exam, she said as a few of the station Chunin that appeared in the room began laying out exam papers in front of them. Answer the questions as best as you can, however be warned that if you are caught cheating you and your teammates will be sent out of this room and you will fail the Chunin exams. No pressure then. Naruto thought. You have 50 minutes to answer the 9 questions on the paper before we will stop the exam and give you the choice to answer the 10th question. Your time will start now. She declared as man of the genin got their heads down and began writing. Naruto also put his head down as he began to read the question, but quickly knew something was off about the test when he saw the questions. They can't expect us to know this surely. He thought to himself, seeing the question were ones that some Jonin probably would not even know. While he could answer 3 or 4 of them, the others left him a little baffled. There is something of about this. He began to scan around the room as discreetly as he could. As he did, some of the Chunin judges began calling out numbers and started sending some of the people out of the room. Many grumbled and claimed they were not cheating, but it did not matter since they were forced out if they did not comply quietly. He looked to his side at the Iwa Kunoichi, was a little surprised to see that she had forehead protector strapped around her wrist and was using it as a reflector to see the exam sheet from the person behind her. She is cheating and not getting caught, he thought as he then turned to try and see his teammates. When he saw Itachi, he saw his Sharingan was on and was copying the hand movements of the guy in front of him, while Anko had a small snake besides her which was relaying the answers from the person behind her. We have to cheat. That is the aim of the first exam. He thought as it finally clicked. Smirking a little to himself, he first answered the question he did know before he put his hands behind his head, and leaned back on the chair and closed his eyes, letting himself feel the chakra of all the people in the room. He could feel most were nervous and scared while only a few were keeping together. A few of the Chunin proctors looked at Naruto in surprise and saw one of his hands take the pencil on the desk and write a few things before putting it down. He did that continuously for the rest of the 50 minutes. Pakura raised an eyebrow at the kid, wondering what kind of trick he was pulling. Everyone pencil down and listen up. Pakura suddenly spoke, gathering all the attention towards her as everyone complied with the order. Alright, are you all ready for the final question? Pakura asked as they all nodded their heads. Good, because know now if you quit you will be disqualified from the exams. However, if you choose to take it and you fail, you will never get promoted and will remain a genin for the rest of your life. She said, flaring her ki, now causing worry and panic to fill most people in the room as many began shouting at how, telling her that it was not fair. Konoha's ninja and Iwa's ninja all stayed silent though as they listened to the others complain. Naruto watched as about 4 teams got up and left the room, not wanting to take the chance. So you think you got what it takes, Gaki? You think because of who you are, you think you can make it? Pakura said towards Naruto, wanting to see how tough the blonde boy was and if he was ready and how he would take the jab. Naruto though just shrugged at her question, gaining looks from many including the Iwa girl next to him. I don't really know, but I do know that I won't let your little trick of trying to demoralize us get to me. This question is all about whether or not we are willing to risk it all. We are shinobi and we will be risking our lives every time we go on a mission and step out of our village. If I was not ready to take those risks, then I would not be sitting here waiting for you to give us the 10th question, would I, Proctor-san? Oh, and Proctor-san, just to clarify for you, I am not doing this because of who my parents are. To be honest, I could not care what you think or what anyone else thinks. I am doing this for me because I believe I am ready. So do not insinuate because of my last name that I think I will get it easy, because that is the last thing I want to happen. While his 2 teammates grinned, Pakura looked around the room to see others who had been ready to leave were now sitting put. His little speech giving them what strength they needed to stay put. Pakura sighed before giving them all the evil eye. For those who are still here, then I will tell you all this now. Pakura spoke as she raised her chakra levels to intimidate the genin, which worked as she showed of her power. You, pass. When she spoke, many looked confused and asked about the 10th question, to which she began explaining to them that the choice to take the risk of continuing was the 10th question and that everyone that remained had moved on to the second part of the exam, much to their delight and others' relief. Now that the first part is over, go and get in your teams. she said as many shrugged their shoulders and did just that. Pretty nice speech you gave us all there. Anko commented as Naruto shrugged. I did my best. Hope you liked it. It was very informative, plus it's probably what made everyone else stay here. She said as Itachi nodded in agreement. Naruto turned around and noticed that the IWA girl he was sat next to was looking at him with an unreadable expression before she turned her head and looked away. Listen up. Pakura called, getting everyone's attention. Now that the first test is over, we can begin the second. She said as she had a devious smile appear on her face, and Naruto began to notice the other Chunin proctors had now vanished from sight. Kai! She said as she made a hand seal with her right hand, and suddenly out of nowhere around them small paper notes began to shine, similar to how explosive notes did. However, instead of an explosion, a torrent of gas began to shoot out. As soon as the gas hit them, all the teams began to feel drowsy, and one by one they began to fall to the ground. Knockout gas. What the hell is the second exam then? Naruto said to himself, as Anko collapsed in front of him and fell asleep, with Itachi falling next before Naruto finally went down, being the last in the room to go down. Pakura then reappeared along with a couple of dozen other shinobi, which included Mikoto, who went forward towards her team. You three have done well to get past the first exam, but now the second exam will be much harder, and it will test your teamwork and your survival skills. She said as she grabbed a hold of the three of them and shined away, just like the other senseis did with their genin teams. When they were gone, Pakura went around the room and began picking up the papers. When she got to Naruto, though, she found a few of the answer had been written, at which she saw were correct, while on the other question he had begun playing game of tic-tac-toe. Seeing it, it made her snort and shake her head. I just passed a genin that did not even take this first exam seriously, and who will no doubt be a big player in this exam. She thought as she continued to collect the papers. This year's Chunin exams are going to be an interest, that is for sure, she thought as she finished picking up the papers and shined away, leaving a now empty classroom. Chapter 9. Chunin Exams, Survival. Oh, what hit me? Naruto groaned aloud as bright light shined directly down upon him, causing him to groan even more and put his hand in front of his eyes in order not to go blind from the sun. He didn't know where he was, but wherever it was hot, very hot. So much so that his forehead was sweating an awful lot and could feel his clothes were sticking to him a little, making him feel a little uncomfortable. The ground beneath him was flat and soft, however it felt loose and like it was shifting beneath him. What am I lying on? He thought as he began to sit up. When he went to rub the back of his neck, he found sand covering it. Look behind him completely, he saw his whole back was covered in sand. What the? He said before he finally took a good look around and noticed they were currently under the shade of a few cacti that were piled together, which were stationed in the middle of the desert. Where the hell are we? He shouted out, causing movements to stir next to him. Looking over, he saw Anko and Itachi all lying next to him, but were showing signs of beginning to wake up. Guys, wake up, we got problems. He said as he shook them both awake. The last he remembered was being in the classroom with the other teams that passed the first tests. Okay already, take it easy dude, Anko complained as she began to sit up and rub her eyes. Itachi did the same and was blinking his eyes. As they both began to wake up, they began to notice where they were. They blinked furiously as if believing it was a genjutsu and even tried to dispel it. Once they realized it was not a genjutsu and they were really in the desert, Anko summed up everyone's thoughts. Where the fuck are we? The desert by the looks of things. Damn, Proctor must have knocked us out with knockout gas. He said as the trio began to shakily stand up. For the next minute they checked themselves over and sighed happily that everyone still had all their belongings. Naruto was especially thankful no one took his blade, but then again he had that in a storage seal on his right wrist since he did not want people seeing his beautiful blade just yet. There's a note. Itachi said as he looked over at one of the cactuses and saw that pinned to the center cactus was indeed a note. They all got up and went towards it. Itachi delicately took it off, not wanting to get struck by one of the prickles of the cactus plant, and read out what it said. Congrats for passing the first exam. Now the real test begins. Your team has been stranded in the middle of the Suna desert, to which your team must survive. You have 5 days to return to the Suna village. If you do not return in that time, then you will be disqualified. Along the way there will be a surprise in store. Oh goody, this sounds like a heap of fun. Naruto commented dryly as Anko and Itachi could not help but agree with him. So we are stranded. Who the hell came up with this stupid idea? Anko wailed as the two sighed and shook their heads. 5 days, huh? I don't suppose anyone actually know which direction we have to go in, do you? Naruto asked as he looked around them. I guess that is another thing we have to figure out. Navigation and stuff like that. Itachi added, though he was more worried about getting food and water once they ran out. Well, if we have 5 days, then I guess we should aim to get there sooner than that. Everyone check your packs to see what food or water we have, since water especially is going to be something we will need to treasure in the desert. It took a few minutes, but they quickly figured it out. They had about 2 bottles of water each along with a few ration bars between them as well as 1 rice ball each. It was not much, but it would have to do. If we run out, then we either have to hope we find some kind of oasis and that Kami is smiling at us, or we make quicker haste towards finding Suna. Well, that is great and all, but how exactly do we find Suna? I don't see anyone with a compass. Anko said, making both Naruto and Itachi think. They thought about it and now really did wish they had a compass and a map. But if they wanted to be Chunin, then they had to figure out news way to get back to Suna. Naruto, Itachi asked, getting the blonde attention. Your sensor ability, how far can you sense with it? My sensor ability? I can sense pretty far. I mean, when I was 5 I could sense at least a few miles, but I have never tried anything that long range. I know there is no chance I could sense all the way to Suna since I have no idea how far out we are. Don't try and find the village, instead look for the nearest sign of life and we can head in that direction. What about your Sharingan? Said Anko, thinking of a way that she could help out. But what if the other sign of life is another team? It's a chance we will have to take. Plus my Sharingan can't see that far. Replied Itachi. I got it. Both stopped talking as they looked towards Anko, who was beaming with pride. I know how we can find our way back to Suna. She said, getting raised eyebrows from both boys. Would you like to tell us this way of yours? Naruto asked as Anko grinned. Better. I can show you, she said before biting her thumb and planting it on the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. A tiny cloud of smoke appeared just in front of Anko, and I watched a small green-skinned snake appeared and slithered towards Anko and up her arm. What can I do for you, Miss Anko? The snake asked. Rella, do you think you could point us in the direction of the sand village, Suna? We have to make it there in the space of 5 days, though we don't have much food and water, so we would prefer to get there as soon as we can. The snake nodded its head and slithered back to the ground and put its head in the air as its body coiled around on the sand. The trio waited for a couple of minutes as the 2 slits that were its nostrils smelled the air, along with its forked tongue slipping out of its mouth and tasting the air. Once the few minutes were up, the serpent's eyes twitched before it began to slither away, motioning for the trio to follow after it. After putting on their cloaks to protect their bodies from the harsh light of the hot sun and try to keep themselves cool and not sunburnt, they quickly followed after the snake with Anko up front and then Naruto and Itachi behind. Wow, that was handy. How did she find it so quickly? Naruto asked Anko as they got their things together and began walking after the snake. I had Rella familiarize herself with the scent that Suna gave off. It may not be a person, but the village does have a unique smell accustomed to it. Plus my summoned snakes can sense chakra too with their inferred vision, picking up heat signatures from a great distance. We may be far out, but a snake has great enhanced senses to that of a person. Naruto whistled to himself while Itachi nodded at the explanations. Summoning animals really are amazing, and the things they can do can even trump a shinobi. You know, I kind of wish I had one myself. They would really be amazing to have as a partner. I agree. They would be greatly beneficial. It is a shame the Uchiha does not have a summoning contract bound to us like a few other clan in the world. I can see they would be of great use. Anko looked back at Naruto while they continued to follow Rella. Well, aren't you going to sign the Toad contract, Naruto? I mean, your dad had signed it as well as his sensei Jiraiya, who is like always with your family. Wouldn't you sign that? Naruto's face grew cold for a second before he steeled himself and looked away. No, I probably won't be signing it. Knowing my parents, they will probably just give it to the twins and Mina and leave me out like usual. He said, though he whispered the last part out. Anko looked at him a little confusingly, as did Rella, who cocked her back a little before getting back to the view in front of her. Why would you say that? I am sure they will let you sign it if you asked. She said, wanting to understand what he meant by it, but saw Itachi shake his head to her as if telling her to stop asking. Besides, just because I won't have the Toad summons doesn't mean I won't have a summoning contract one day. It might not be the Toad, or Slug, or the ape contracts that Hokage-sama and Ero Sennin hold, or the ones Bachan and Jiji have, but I will hold one eventually, and it will beat the other contracts. He said, thinking about other animals that may have contracts to them and which he would love to have. Anko shrugged. Well, good luck with that. Summoning contract aren't exactly easy to come by. Then I will have to be on the lookout in the future," he said as they followed Rella. Nightfall. After hours of trekking through the harsh Suna desert and using up about 1/3 of their water supply, the group stopped for the night at a small rock formation that provided some cover for them that they could use for shelter. After thanking her and managing to catch a desert mouse as a treat that Enko gave her, Rella disappeared and went back to her home. The trio made a small supper with what they could spare for the first night before they got in their sleeping bags. Unlike the sweltering heat of the daytime, the night was quite cold as the moon hit them along with the cool desert winds. "It's a nice night tonight," Naruto said as he lay down on the soft sand looking up at the star-filled sky with Itachi on his right and Enko on his left. "You know," Enko said leaning on her elbows and turning to Naruto. "Why don't we just travel through the night instead? It would be a lot less strenuous since we won't have the heat of the sun hitting us and no one would be expecting it." "I had thought about that, but there lies a problem with that theory." Itachi spoke up from his spot. "If we were to travel at night we would have multiple problems with defending ourselves as well as making our way to the village. There will be no daylight so we will not be able to see a thing. Plus there are poisonous animals in the desert, if we tread on one in the dark and it hits us?" Naruto nodded as Enko thought about it. "I guess that's a good point. But can't we use the light form the moon? And what would happen if one night the clouds cover the moon therefore giving us no light?" Enko pouted as he spoke to her like she was a child and went back to lying on her back and crossed her arms as Naruto looked at her playfully. "Fine then." Naruto laughed while Enko shook his head at his teammate's amusement as he continued to stare up at the sky while Naruto and Enko made idle chat. "I wonder how Ka-san is doing back in Suna," he thought to himself despite knowing Mikoto was more than capable of looking after herself since she was a powerful shinobi. As Naruto made idle chat with Enko, Naruto thought back to the snake he had seen Enko use earlier and it had brought up a question in his mind that he had about Enko ever since the first time he met her and used those snake abilities in front of him. "Hey Enko," he said, getting her attention. "How did you get the snake contract anyway?" He saw next to him that Enko froze up and in her eyes had a brief look of panic hit her before she narrowed them a little and looked directly at him. From his spot Itachi looked over as well since he had wondered the same thing. "Why do you ask? You have never wondered before?" she asked. "Well, like you said earlier, you said that summoning contracts rare to come by since not many shinobi actually have them. And it made me wonder just how you managed to get yours. The snake contract is a very powerful summoning contract. My Gigi told me about one of his past students that went bad took off when I was only a few years old. Gigi told me that he had the snake summoning contract and took it with him, so it made me curious to how you have it." Naruto looked back at Enko but when he did he was surprised to see an angry Enko lunge at him with an angry and upset look on her face. She landed on him, but Naruto quickly turned the tables and managed to use his greater physical strength and flip her over onto her back while he managed to pin her hands to her sides as well place his knees on hers to stop her from kicking him. Itachi was going to help, but Naruto gave him a look that told him not to interfere. "Don't you dare say that. I earned that contract and that bastard betrayed me," she shouted as Naruto put his hand over her mouth since they did not want nearby teams to hear them. "Enko, we still are in the second exam. You must try and be quiet," he said, but felt a little taken back when he saw tears cascading down her face. "Enko-chan, he promised he would look after me but instead he turned his back on me, saying I outlived my usefulness and branded me forever with his curse mark. I trusted him." She sobbed as Naruto was not sure what to do so he just hugged her into his chest and wrapped his arms around her. Itachi watched in silence but listened in and felt his heart go to his friend. "Tell me what happened to you, Enko-chan, tell me so I can help you." Naruto gently pushed as Enko sniffed a little before she explained. She explained how 6 years ago when she was 4, the snake Sannin Orochimaru had taken an interest in her and had taken her under his wing and made himself her guardian and mentor. She had spent 4 years with him and he had even taken her with him when he had turned his back on the village. At first she said he was a nice person who made her feel at ease but then would disappear for long periods of time and each time he had become more and more sinister-like. Then one day when he came back he hate-bitten her out of the blue and put some kind of seal on her neck that caused her to fall into excruciating pain as it made her body feel like it was on fire and being ripped in two. Afterward when she had woken up he had shaken his head at her saying it had not given him the desired result he had wanted before just leaving her where she was and never looking back. 2 days later she had been found by a team of hunter-nin from Konoha where she was quickly returned. "Why has my father and mother not tried to get rid of this seal?" Naruto said with a look of anger on his face as he looked at the seal on her shoulder but felt Enko shrugged. I'm not too sure. The Hokage said the once that without knowing the formula Orochimaru used, it would be difficult to destroy it. Plus they said he put some of his essence into it, making it darker, and it made those uneasy to try and tamper with it in case it backfired. Naruto nodded, and though it did make sense, he understood where they were coming from, though it still made him pissed as he covered the seal up. Enko-chan, look at me, he said as Enko looked up at him. As you know, I am practicing and training to be a Fuinjutsu master, and after seeing this seal and hearing your story, I will make you this promise right here and now. I promise I will make Orochimaru pay for hurting you, and I will get that seal of you. I promise it on my way of the shinobi. He said as Enko looked up at him with shocked and wide eyes. I second that. Itachi muttered, making the two look at him, forgetting he was even there. We will make Orochimaru sorry for ever harming you, Enko-san. We will bring you justice. Guys, Enko said quietly before she grabbed Naruto and Itachi from where he lay and hugged them both tightly. Thank you both so much. She muttered, making the two boys smiled at return the hug to her before they decided to call it a night and prepare for the second day of trekking through the desert of Suna. Next morning, the trio woke as soon as the sun hit their faces and quickly packed or sealed their stuff away before making their way back towards the sand village. Enko looked happier than either of the two boys had seen her before as she summoned her snake summon, which quickly led the way again, though this time at a quicker pace since none of them wanted to spend another 4 days in the sweltering heat of the Suna desert. As they walked, they felt Kami smiling on them when they found a few rows of cacti on their path. Knowing that cacti stored water within them, Naruto cut off some of the cacti parts and the trio drained what they could from the cacti and got more water to last them an extra day if they needed it. They walked for a few hours and were feeling good about themselves since they were making good time until Itachi and Enko noticed Naruto had stopped. Naruto? Naruto placed his index finger to his lips. There is someone here, he said, instantly making Enko and Itachi on guard as they grouped together back to back in a triangle formation. Where are they? Enko asked as Itachi had his Sharingan activated when Naruto had his eyes closed, searching around them. After a few moments of searching, his eyes narrows 20 meters east of them. There. They all turned to the spot Naruto had pointed at before firing off their attacks. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Suetun, Tepidama, Senaijishu. The 3 attacks surged forward together right to the spot where Naruto's sensor abilities pinpointed. Just as they neared, a trio reddish-orange balls burst out of the sands and hit the attacks, causing a small explosion to occur that knocked sand all over the place from the gust of the attack. As the sand and smoke cleared, a figure jumped out from the smoke cloud covered in a light brown cloak with an umbu mask covering their face. Looking at them, they could not tell whether the cloaked figure was a male or a female. Futon, Kaze Senbon, the figure said in a voice that was monotone and must have a voice change to it since they could not tell their gender. A flurry of wind made Senbon shoot from the user's hand and towards the team. Before they hit, Naruto slammed his hands to the ground. Doton, Dorihiki. As the wall came up and successfully stopped the wind made Senbon form, striking them, the figure leaped over the wall and pushed themselves forward and towards the group. They landed in the middle of the group, making the trio jump back. Naruto unsealed Shusui and swung at the masked shinobi, but was blocked by a chakra-enhanced kunai. Why are you attacking us? He asked as Enko came up from the right side and kicked the shinobi, who then managed to duck out of the way. I can't let just anyone get to the next round of the Chunin exams now, can I? You 3 have come quite far in such a short amount of time, the figure said, making the 3 look at them in surprise. So it is part of the test. We have to get past you in order to get to the next round, Naruto said as he watched as the unnamed shinobi nodded. Naruto looked at Enko, who was still trying to hit the shinobi, and nodded to her, who then nodded back. Both pulled away and jumped a fire distance before the unnamed ninja saw Itachi making hand signs. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, he called out as 5 fireballs shaped like flower shot towards the shinobi. They hit their target, though when the attack cleared they saw a log in its place. Kawarimi, Naruto said. He searched around but sensed them underneath Enko. Enko, beneath you. Enko jumped just as hands shot out of the sand that went to grab her ankle as they person shot out of the ground following after Enko and deliver a hard kick to her abdomen that made Enko get the wind knocked out of her. As she fell, Itachi came up from behind her and caught her, while Naruto sent a flurry of shuriken towards the enemy but deflected them with a ray of their own shuriken. Suetun, Mizurappa, Naruto said as a jet of water shot out of his mouth. Katan, Hizekishu, the enemy said as ash poured out of their mouth and formed a protective layer in front of them that the jet of water hit instead. Before Naruto could make a move, the figure appeared next to him and punched him, making him fall back. Before he could land though, the figure quickly appeared behind him and kicked him in the back as well before finally throwing him towards his friends. When he landed, Itachi grabbed a kunai with a paper bomb on it and threw it towards their enemy. It exploded just as it went past her head, but quickly saw they had used the kawarimi once again. "You will have to do better than that," the shinobi said, appearing behind them, and used the wind senbon on them again. "Katan, Bukahiki no Jutsu," Itachi said as a wall of flames erupted in front of them which stopped the wind senbon. However, the shinobi jumped through the fire wall and lunged at Itachi, and the two began to taijutsu spar. Naruto recovered from the hits from earlier and went forward with Enko to help their teammate. As the figure managed to trip Itachi up and made a kunai appear out of their sleeve and drove it towards Itachi, Naruto appeared beside Itachi, blocking the strike with Shusui. Enko came up to the side and kicked the figure, which managed to connect this time. However, the enemy shinobi grinned underneath their mask before they suddenly dispersed in a gust of wind. "Wind clone," Naruto said as they looked where they had been standing before a voice rang out behind them. "Futon, Taifu Kujeki," they said as a tornado of wind erupted, formed their palms and shot towards the team. "Disperse," Naruto said as the trio jumped away. But when they did, what they guessed was clones came up from behind them and kicked the three of them away. The three landed with a thud as the clones disperse in wind again as the shinobi approached them. "Maybe I should use my new sword technique," he thought, since he really did not want to use Mokuton for this. He could not risk being exposed as a Mokuton user just yet. "We need to work together. Whoever they are no Chunin, they must be stronger, maybe a Jonin level like Mikoto sensei. Why do we get stuck with someone who a high-level ninja? Why couldn't we get a Chunin?" Enko whined as she stood up. "I guess they thought we were different from the others. I don't think we should disappoint," Itachi said as the three nodded. "If we work together we can do it," Naruto said as the three readied themselves. "Not giving up yet." "How do I know you are worth my time?" the ninja asked. "Watch and see," Naruto said. "Sanaijushu," Enko called out as two snakes erupted from her sleeves. They struck at the shinobi, who jumped back. When the masked ninja did, she saw a flurry of kunai from Naruto and Itachi heading towards them. "Futon, Daitapa," they said as a blast of wind erupted from her, knocking the kunai away. When she looked towards them, she saw Itachi and Enko had vanished. Looking up, she saw the two coming down towards them and engaged the masked shinobi. Itachi kicked high while Enko attacked low, making the shinobi work a little harder than before, but still managed to rather elegantly dodge the attacks. As she attacked, the masked shinobi noticed Naruto had now vanished. Her eyes searched around all the while defending from the other two. She saw Enko have an opening and went to kick her, but stopped when a thud was heard behind them. Looking round, she saw a bottle of water on the ground that was used to collect the water from the cacti from earlier. "Suetun, Sentu no Umi," a voice said from behind, revealing Naruto, who had used the camouflage jutsu to hide himself from the enemy. Their eyes widened a little from the name of the jutsu and looked down to the bottle of water that was still before the water suddenly shot out of the bottle and created a sharp spire about 5 foot high. The shinobi cursed inwardly and had to jump forward, towards Enko and Itachi in order to get out of the way. When they did though, Enko's foot hit the ninja's stomach hard and Itachi threw a kunai that grazed their right arm. Shaking out of her stupor, the ninja went to make some hand sign but felt another presence from behind them. Naruto appeared from behind and has both his hands on Shusui. The masked shinobi noticed the blade has a blue aura around it, showing Naruto is pouring chakra into it. Bringing the sword up for a moment with both his hands as he channeled his chakra though the blade before swinging it down, making an after image be left in its place. Form how quickly he brought the blade down. "Kiri Shigur," he said as the blade hit the kunai that was being used to stop it, but it cut right through it and the tip of the blade managed to slice across the ninja's cheek and a bit of their shoulder. "Shit," the shinobi said aloud without the voice muffler, revealing to all of them that it was a woman behind the mask. The now revealed kunoichi jumped in the air away before making a few hand signs. "Shikuten, Kajisatsu," she said, making the trio look in surprise before 3 swirling balls of gas just like what they had first seen earlier appeared and shot towards them. "Doton, Dorihiki," Naruto said as he shot mud out of his mouth to make a mud-like wall in front of him and the others, which they all crowed behind as the explosion hit, making the wall quickly crack and get destroyed. It pushed the trio back and made them land on the sand, but they quickly got back up. "What was that?" "Scorch style, I have never even heard of that before. Is it some kind of bloodline?" Enko asked. "An old bloodline of Suna, though I am unsure of how many there are that can use it, since I don't think there are many left." Itachi said as they readied for another attack but instead saw there was no one there. Naruto, they asked as they looked at Naruto to see him concentrating before he let out a relieved sigh. They're gone. I can just about sense her leaving the area. So we pass then and can keep going back to the village? Enko asked as Itachi nodded. Thank Kami. She said before dropping to the ground, which was quickly followed by Naruto and Itachi as they could finally catch their breath. Man, that match was intense. She was so strong and her hits were hard. Not as hard as Bachan, but they still packed a wallop. Naruto said as the others agreed with him. She was very skilled. From what I could see from her speed and strength and following her movements with my Sharingan, she must have been Jonin level. I think my Ka-san would have even had a bit of a struggle with her. Itachi mentioned, panting slightly from the fight. Naruto grinned. Well, whoever she is, I want to fight her again one day. She seems like an awesome opponent. He said, making Itachi and Enko shake their heads, but had to admit they agreed with him. As they rested, they noticed a small scroll sitting a little beside them that they just noticed. Itachi took it and looked at the symbol on the scroll and showed a symbol of the Chunin exams. I guess that's for us? Naruto asked. Since we passed this test, I guess this is just to confirm it. The Kunoichi must have left it here just before she departed. They all accepted the answer and took another few minutes to rest from their recent skirmish. Elsewhere, the masked shinobi dropped down beside a rock formation a few miles away from the battle she had just been in and took a few ragged breaths as she got her bearings together. Those brats were actually pretty good. She breathed out as she hinged, making her form get covered by a small cloud of smoke. When it disappeared, it showed Pakura, the proctor of the Chunin exams. She winced a little as she bandaged the cut on her shoulder before getting it seen to later when she returned to the village. She then traced over the small cut on her cheek. The blood had dried off, but she was surprised that the trio, Naruto mainly, had even managed to hit her. Those kids are quite something. She thought, having been impressed by Naruto in the first exam, which prompted her to want to test him during the second. I may not have been going all out, but to actually wound me and make me use my Shokunin is not an easy feat. Clicking the joint in her neck, she began making her back to the Suna, all the while thinking. That blonde kid has some skill. He might just win this exam. Next day, 2 Chunin gate guards stood as the entrance to the sand village as they watched over the horizon. As they watched, 3 figured in cloaks that covered their body made their way towards them. The 2 guards readied themselves for some kind of fight but saw the kids' faces when they got closer and recognized them from the other day. As the trio got near, they took off their hoods as Naruto stood forward and showed the scroll they were given the other day. So you 3 actually made it back? One of the guards asked, looking a little impressed. It was one of the fastest times for the Suna survival exam. You're the first team to make it back. Well, don't we feel special? Enko said as her arms were a little sun-burnt form where the sun has managed to get them. Naruto and Itachi were in a similar state. Once the trio had suppressed the disguised Pakura, they continued their way through the desert, though this time at a quickened pace as they now just wanted to get to Suna as quickly as possible. The desert quickly became one of their least favorite places. After another night of camping and a lot more running, Naruto finally managed to sense the village nearby as he recognized the signatures there from the other day. So what do we do now? Itachi asked the guarded as they pointed to the scroll in Naruto's hand. Open it up. Now that you have arrived at the gate, you can now open the scroll. The other guard said as the trio looked at the scroll and shrugged. Naruto opened the scroll before it began to shine. Ichi placed it on the floor in front of him and took a step back. After a couple of seconds, smoke covered the scroll before it quickly got swept away and revealed a smiling Mikoto looking at her team with a proud look. Ka-san? Itachi said, surprised, while Naruto and Enko grinned at seeing their sensei. Well done, all 3 of you. She said as she quickly glomped the trio in a massive hug. I knew you would all do it, but I was still so worried all the same. So since we made it back, does that mean we pass? Naruto asked with a hopefully expression while Enko did the same, though Itachi was a bit more suppressed. Mikoto laughed a little before nodding. Yes, congratulations, you have passed the second round of the Chunin exams. She said as Naruto and Enko fist pumped the air while Itachi smiled. After getting their stuff together and getting a well done from the gate guards, they made their way towards their hotel since there was another 2 days to go for the other teams to arrive before they would find out what was next for the third test. That's it for part 2. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.